speak first? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we're against Syrian refugees coming to Canada, and my points are going to be the government should help out homeless people in Canada first before bringing in more people, as they're already having trouble controlling that problem. And they bring the Syrian refugees were going to bring a sense of security threat already, and it hasn't even started yet. And Nick will be talking about the economic strain they have on the country, and the fact that the refugees will most likely be housed in military camps, which is not going to be putting them in a great situation anyways. Anything else?
I think that's it.
So we feel that Syrian refugees should be allowed into the country. I will be talking about the refugee system in Canada and its history and the screening process involved. And Kiera will be talking about the possible outcomes if we don't allow the refugees in, and as well as the idea of just why wouldn't we allow them.
Okay, great. Back to you guys for your 4 points.
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to talk about is the economic strain this is going to put on Canada. Right now, we're already in a time of recession, so we're already drained as it is. If you take a look at Jordan, according to a poll done by the Carnegie Endowment, Jordan has accepted in the last, up until 2014, 2,771,502 total refugees, and as of last June, 620,000 of those are Syrians. The Jordanians were already in an economic crisis at the time, also a resource crisis, and they're even more drained than they are now. Even more drained than they were, sorry. Now they're having a very huge struggle bouncing back from that economic trouble and that resource trouble, and they're having trouble feeding their own people and making their own people, keeping their own people well. So why can't we learn something from the Jordanians and not understand that going into an economic crisis and accepting more people than we already can't handle is a horrible idea?
So with the homeless, which kind of ties into that, I have a 2013 study by CBC, and it says at least 200,000 Canadians experience homelessness in any given year, and at least 150,000 Canadians a year use homeless shelter. So if we're having a problem controlling these people and getting them into housing and getting them a job, how are we going to control 25,000 more people?
The other thing I'd like to touch on is where they're going to be staying. They're going to be staying at CFB Trenton, which is a military base not too far from the city of Trenton in Ontario. And CFB Trenton is a horrible place for them to be for two reasons. Number one, it's a terrorist threat, and number two, it's horrible living conditions for these people. I'll start on the terrorist threat here first. CFB Trenton, is home to some of Canada's most well-guarded military hardware and computers, and yet we're going to be putting these people right into the middle of it.
Okay.
Oh, that was it? Wow.
Two, right?
It's 4. 2, 2, and then 4 and 4.
No, is it 2 per team?
4 minutes per team.
Is it 4 minutes?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, that felt short.
So that was good. Okay,
We good there, Zach?
Continue.
Okay. So continuing on with CFB Trenton here, it's why would we put people who we don't know, if there's a risk of terrorism to this country, why are we putting them right where some of our most guarded military technology is? It's one of the worst places they can be. I know it's one of the most well guarded, but it's still putting them in that close of a proximity, and not only that, but making them stay there is a horrible idea. The other thing I'd like to bring up with CFB Trenton is that if we're going on the humanitarian look at things, it's a horrible place for them to be staying. According to CBC here, the refugees are staying in houses that are meant for air cadets during the summer. They don't have any heat in them, and they're going to be confined to Trenton, which isn't really. We're bringing them over to experience their first taste of freedom, so we're going to confine them into one place, and that doesn't make sense to me.
And they also bring a sense of security threat, which whether or not they do, it remains to be seen. But according to a new article from The Star, it says that they're going to be screening out single men already, so they're already changing their plan based on the Paris attacks, and they're only going to be letting in women, children, and families to permit into Canada. So
I think that's all we need.
Okay, those are the 4 points, and then over to this side for 4 minutes. You guys are ready?
All right, so first of all, 2 words. compassion, and fairness. Typically, these values, among many others, are what comes to mind when I think of what makes us Canadian. By rejecting these refugees at their utmost time of need, we are essentially throwing these values out the window. Now, what is a refugee exactly, for anyone who doesn't really remember from social studies or anyone who doesn't know at all? Refugees are people who are forced to leave their homes and country due to fear and persecution. Refugees are different from immigrants in the fact that immigrants are choosing to start a new life in a new country, whereas refugees don't necessarily have a choice. The Canadian government website says that Canada has resettled refugees to save their lives and provide stability to those fleeing persecution who have no hope of relief, and has been doing this since 1776, and has been pretty solid thus far. Amnesty International states that since 2011, more than 4 million Syrians have been forced to leave their homes in the face of the ongoing war in their country, and roughly half of them are children. So why would we close our doors to them? This site also states that more than 50% of Syria's population is currently displaced, meaning they have nowhere to go. So they don't really have any options other than us.
My first point is the possible outcomes we would face if we were to say no to Syrian refugees. First outcome, it would look really bad on us. It would most likely give us a bad reputation. According to facts on the Canadian government website, like Nick said, we have been accepting refugees for 239 years. How it would look to others if we said yes for centuries and said no to Syrians. My second outcome, what would happen if war broke up in Canada and Canadians had to flee for their safety? If we close our doors to people in need, are we expecting people to let us in with welcoming arms? A third outcome, say we did say no to Syrian refugees, but 2 years down the road, European refugees needed to flee to Canada. How are we going to look if we were picking and choosing who we let in based on race and religion? We will look scared to ISIS, we will look biased, we will look unsupportive, and we will disappoint other countries that have helped to settle and save refugees.
The second point, the screening process for the refugee system. According to the Canadian refugee system, under the Canadian government legislation, all resettlement cases must be carefully screened to ensure that there are no issues related to security, criminality, or health. Just recently, an article posted, you mentioned, Cole, that they just changed their policy or their plan to women, children, and families, so that even decreases the risk. And yes, there were women involved, but that doesn't mean, like, just because even women, both men and women were involved, doesn't mean you're going to root out everyone. This screening process will ensure that, because like they are refugees, like they're the ones fleeing from the terrorists, not the terrorists integrating themselves. So the Canadian screening process will ensure that.
My second point is the simplest of all. Why wouldn't we let them in? Some of my points kind of go off what Nick has already said to make some emphasis on them. According to an article on the New York Times website, more than 200,000.
That's it, 4 minutes? Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we have a minute to break before we get into the open debate. Thanks, Zach, for keeping us on time. It's like extra life on that Mario. Okay, Kiara, go ahead.
Okay, you did mention costs. We have a program called the Resettlement Assistance Program. It's a program specifically set aside for things like this that'll happen. According to an article on CTV, the support is generally available for up to a year. The amount depends on the size of the family. It is enough to help them survive, but just the minimum basics. For example, a refugee in Ontario was given $781 a month in 2013. Refugees are expected to repay the cost of their transportation to get over here. They do get an allowance to help them get on their feet, but they are expected to pay these costs back. We're not just throwing money around. We have programs specifically made for this. Also, refugees have already settled in Calgary, and Mayor Nenshi did write a piece about it saying that Calgarians are helping right now. They're lowering rent prices, they're staying in houses, they're not like in camps in Calgary right now. We have refugees currently staying in houses in Calgary.
Thing I'd like to say about that though is I understand that there is a fund for this, but we could be using that money for something else. We could be using that money to be helping people out here. At least 200,000 Canadians experience homelessness in any given year. We have our own people here to be worrying about, so why aren't we worrying about them? On the other thing, you said that Calgarians here are very welcoming of all these people, but a recent Ipsos poll conducted exclusively for Global News found that 60% of Canadians completely disagree with the Liberal plan to be bringing in more refugees, and the lowest percentage of that was in Ontario, where 56% disagreed, and Alberta here was the highest. So not everyone's going to be welcoming these people. In fact, a majority of them aren't.
Mayor Nenshi on that same article actually said they held a meeting and he was expecting Calgarians to show up and be just completely against them showing up, and people started raising their hands saying, how can I help? A lady that Nenshi knew was I'll come back to that. We take care of our homeless people. According to the action plan on the government's website, we have an economic action plan. In 2013, they announced nearly $600 million over 5 years, starting in April 2014, to be used to renew and refocus. This gives people who are homeless a place to live, provides them with necessary support to help stabilize. They work with mental health illness associations to make sure people are getting support that they need. We do take care of our own people. It's up to them to accept it and to get their lives back on track too. We are helping our people.
It's not totally up to them to accept it though, because out of the 200,000 here that do experience homelessness, only 150,000 have access to homeless shelters. That leaves another 50,000 who don't have access. That's twice the amount of refugees we're going to bring in. We still don't have all the resources we need to be bringing in more people. And the other thing I'd like to bring up is in Trudeau's plan that in Trudeau's statement he made with Matt Galloway on CBC last night, he said that it's an issue with the screening you said earlier. He said that you said that the screening was going to weed out any potential threats to Canada before they even make it here. But Trudeau said that yesterday that the health and security screening will not be done here in Canada. They'll be done by overseas. And he never said who would be doing this. He never said who would be doing the screening. So how can we have faith in people we don't even know screening people that are potential threats to our country?
Well, that's the thing, like, there will be Canadian officials over in Syria.
Has that been stated?
Well, and regardless, Justin Trudeau has purposely pushed back the date of refugees coming into Canada to ensure our safety and to ensure their safety. They're the ones coming here. Canada is having, people are saying crazy things on the internet. Do you not think that they're worried about coming over here when people are putting threads on the internet and people are doing polls saying we don't want refugees here at all? Justin Trudeau also wants to ensure their safety, and the fact that he's pushing back dates and making sure this is a well-accepted and safe process. He's not just gonna be yeah, do a screening over in Syria, who cares who does it, who cares if they're gonna be safe or not. This isn't just a joke. This is 250,000 people coming into our country. It's not like he's taking this lightly.
The thing with the fact that he's pushing his own plan shows me that he doesn't have faith in it yet, and that there's still a lot of hard edges he has to work out to it, which I completely agree with, because there is a lot of loose ends to it.
There's a lot of different factors too. We don't know these people. Can we trust them? That's why we have to screen them. But if we can't screen them in our own country, what does that even mean?
I just want to touch on the
That's 5 minutes. Wow. Okay. Great open debate, you guys. Okay, so 1 minute of prep before your closing statements.
So the issues that still remain after the arguments here that I've heard are, number one, the screening process, because people overseas who, we don't understand who these people are who are going to be doing the screening, are going to be bringing over people to our country, and I don't think that's right. I think we should have the right to see to know who is doing the screening, and so we know that we can trust them, so we know who is coming over to the country. And the other issue I'd like to bring up stems off of that. Number one, we are extremely economically strained right now in our own recession. I'd be open to this plan if we were in a stronger state, but we are not. And because of that economic strain, our healthcare system is also strained right now. We don't have enough workers to be taking in another huge load of people that we don't even know what the sicknesses are, because if we're doing the health screening overseas still, we may not get the most accurate. Even if we did have Canadians that we could trust overseas, there's still a chance that we can have a mismatch in the amount of healthcare cases we're bringing over to our own country, and that will further strain our own healthcare system as it already is. That's all I need to say.
I just kind of want to put it into a smaller perspective and kind of give everyone an image of what this is like. So, say your next door neighbor has 10 bears in his house. You're next door in your house, it's secure, you have well-respected security, you're safe. It's obvious that your neighbor is under serious attack and there's probably no chance that he'll survive. You obviously look at it. Are you going to sit in your house, ignore the fact that he's suffering, or are you going to help him into your safe and secure house? Sure, there's a chance of a bear sneaking into your house if you let him in, but you've taken the proper security precautions. Your neighbor may be under attack from bears, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to turn into a bear and attack you in your house, obviously. You can either sit in your safe house and know that he's being attacked next door, suffering, or you can save him and bring him into safety. We are the safe house and the Syrians are our neighbors. We should take a step back and ignore judgments. Look at the things from their perspective. Wouldn't you be desperate for someone to reach out and help you? Why shouldn't we let people in that have been subjected to war crimes and other awful violations of their human rights? We should be putting aside our judgments, and we should be coming together with the world to help out people in need. Other countries like Jordan, for example, and Turkey, they have accepted so many refugees because they understand and they're trying to help. And they're under so much pressure right now because they're trying to let people in and help out as many as they can, and they can't take in anymore. And we're sitting here judging them, saying, let's not let them into our country. Just think if it were us and people didn't want to let us in.